Into the dark street we ran. I discovered quickly that half a year indoors did little for my physique, and I was out of shape. After only a few blocks, I was gasping for breath. Yamazaki, who was running ahead of me, suddenly stopped and looked sharply behind us.
何があってもこの通りを走り抜けろ。後ろを振り向く必要はない。
Don't tell me someone's behind us.
君は知らなくてもいい。
Seems like Yamazaki's hunch was right. What should I tell Yamazaki? Yamazaki, you should go. I'll stay behind. Yamazaki, please should. Bleh. Yamazaki, please, you should go.
バカなことを言うな。君がここに残って何ができる？
If I distract the enemies, then you could go in the meantime.
引きつける役ならば俺がやる。君は走れ。
Yamazaki wasn't looking to take no for an answer, so I nodded in good faith. I looked to what lay ahead for me. As I stepped into the next intersection, I saw a flash of metal from the corner of my eye.
君は惑うな。じきに合流できる。白の大福を目指してこのまま走れ。
Right. I kept running. I pretended I didn't hear the sounds of swords ringing against one another behind me and ran. My knees felt weak and my legs shook, but I kept going. They'd have to collapse or tear themselves to pieces before I'd stop. Even so, I felt so slow. I wanted to cry out, to scream in my body, to go faster, faster! A bright light suddenly cut through the darkness, and I placed my hand over my eyes from the glare. My heart stopped. Was it Joshu soldiers? I froze.
何やってんだ、てめえは。
I very nearly began to cry with relief. Hijikata-san was not dressed in the usual light blue jacket, but rather a bright white uniform to be seen in dimly lit places. Instead, I simply collapsed as Harada reached out to grab me.
大丈夫か？勝手に豚書から出てると土方さんに怒られるぞ。
I grabbed hold of Harada's hand and pulled my body to its feet. I wanted to tell him I had permission to leave and explained it was all right for me to be there, but I was so winded that I could barely speak. Besides, I wasn't sent to Hijikata to make excuses. I took as deep of a breath as my shuttered lungs could manage before speaking. They're meeting at Ikeda. Suddenly, Hijikata-san's expression changed.
本命はあっちか。
I nodded rapidly.
敵の会合場所は池田屋であると。
Hijikata-san gestured towards me.
三男さんなら脱走を見過ごさねえ。つまり、こいつは早朝命令で豚書を出たってことだ。よく俺らと合流できたな。今日の地理には詳しくないんだろう。
Yamazaki. I finally got some of my breath back, and I did my best to tell them what had happened.
合図や諸次第はどうなった？もう池田屋に行ってるのか？
I just shook my head. Hijikata-san thought for a moment, then spoke.
斎藤と原田は隊を率いて池田屋へ向かえ。俺はよそで別件を処理しておく。
Harada and Saito nodded curtly, then turned to their business.
あんたもこれ以上の単独行動は危険だ。俺たちか副長かどちらかに同行しろ。
I still lacked the breath to respond properly, so I simply nodded. We both knew they couldn't leave me here, but whom should I accompany? It's Hijikata. The prospect of being alone with him was rather frightening, but for reasons I still didn't understand, I decided to go with Hijikata-san. We didn't want to know. We were so quiet for a while, I felt like I should say something. but I wasn't sure what. Instead, I kept quiet. After a moment, he glanced down at me.
伝令ご苦労だったな。俺たちが先手を打てるのはお前の手柄だ。
I never thought Hijikata-san of all people would praise me for anything. My heart fluttered momentarily in my chest. But what did he mean by an advantage? If the battle at the Ikeda Inn had begun, it didn't seem like we had much of an advantage at all. We stepped from the alley into the central avenue. Hijikata-san, why are we out here on the street?
臆病風吹かすような連中は目立つことしか頭にねえって相場が決まってるんだよ。
I blinked, not sure what to make of that. Yamazaki appeared beside us without making a sound. Boy, sneaky as fuck. Yamazaki, you're safe! He didn't seem to have been hurt at all, thank goodness. Yamazaki's eyes slid to me for a moment, then back to Hijikata-san.
池田屋の件はすでにお聞き及びかと思います。自分は会津藩と諸次第へも通達を行うよう三男総長より促されておりましたが。
だろうな。次の指示は追って出す。山崎はひとまず俺と一緒に来い。
承知。
腰の表役人どもへは新選組の副長が直々に挨拶しに行く。
Deep in his cold eyes, I saw a spark of anger. They appeared as the words came out of his mouth, lines of government soldiers marching towards us. There were hundreds of them marching across the entire width of the street, several rows deep. Now I understand why Hijikata-san took us out into the street. We would never have seen the government force as we shimmied through the back alleys. There was something about their march, so slow and unconcerned, that lit the fires of anger in my eyes. The rest of the men are still fighting at the inn. The Shinsengumi had a few soldiers able to fight, but they were risking their lives for Kyo. Didn't these men have the same responsibility? Why were they rushing to help us at the inn? Perhaps my anger was more obvious than I realized because Hijikata-san gave a snort of laughter.
安心しろ。新選組を奴らのいいようにはさせねえ。
He stepped forward into the very middle of the street, directly in front of the advancing soldiers. All he did was move a few feet and turn to face them, but he held such authority in his movements. He could have easily been at the head of an army.
局長以下、我ら新選組一同、池田屋にて御用改めの最中である。一切の手出しは無用。池田屋には立ち入らないでもらおうか。
Even I could see that the government men were going to protest Hijikata-san's proclamation when Yamazaki leaned over to whisper in my ear.
もし池田屋に立ち入ることを許せば、長州浪士制圧すら彼らの手柄とされるだろう。
What? How could they? After all the Shinsengumi had done, it just didn't seem fair. But it's the men of the Shinsengumi who are risking their lives.
それだけ我ら新選組は軽んじられているということだ。副長は今たった一人で新選組のために体を張っておられる。彼らが池田屋に踏み込むことを許せば、その突入したことだけを喧伝するだろう。実際に突入した新選組の武勇はなかったことにされかねない。だからこそ副長は会津藩の介入を封じようとしてくれているのだ。
Yamazaki held Hijikata-san in such high regard. So when Hijikata-san said we have an advantage, this is what he was referring to.
し
かし我々にも務めが。
小せえ旅館に何十人も入るわけねえだろ。池田屋を取り囲むくらいが関の山だ。それとも乱戦に巻き込まれて死にてえというなら止めはしねえが、我が身が可愛いならおとなしくしとくんだな。
Hijikata-san's tone was much as his words, left no room for argument. Until the battle ended, he stood his ground and not a single man challenged him. Yawning. Finally, the sun rose from the black sky. The raid itself had lasted only 2 hours. But for me, at least, it had felt far longer. There had been 20 Imperial nationalists at the Ikeda. Hello? The Shinsengumi had killed 7 Ronin and injured 4 more. I learned later that with the help of the Aizu Domain and Kyo Judiciary Commissioner, they arrested 23 people. The owner of the Ikeda had also been arrested for trying to help the Choshu rebels escape. The Shinsengumi had won an incredible victory fighting against superior numbers and enemy territory, but they paid dearly for it. Okita had taken a blow to the chest and lost consciousness. Heisuke had been cut on the forehead, and the bleeding refused to stop. Nagakura had injured his left hand. One of the Shinsengumi soldiers lost his life at the inn's rear entrance, and 2 others were severely injured there as well. It didn't seem likely that they would survive. The Kyo military and judiciary commissioners also fought the Choshu Ronin. With the successful resolution of the Battle of Ikeda Inn, the Shinsengumi had, at last, made a name for themselves. It looked as though the peace in Kyo had been protected. Never could I have imagined that the ultimate result of their victory would be. I think we just reached the skipping part, hopefully. Yeah, we can skip this. Oh. This is August. I think we're on rounds with Harada? Right? Yep. We're still behind. A few days passed. Your medicine's ready. I was carrying medicine and some hot sake. I don't drink, so I don't know if hot alcohol is even tasty at all, or if it's just sake in general that can be drunk like that. I don't know. I know nothing about liquor. The medicine was Ishida medicinal powder, which was manufactured by Hijikata-san's family.
宗司と平助に飲ませてやってくれ。それから三男さんにもだ。
Sanan-san's eyebrows rose at the mention of his name.
おや、私も飲むんですか？私の傷はもう塞がっていますよ。
試してみましょうよ、三男さん。この薬って何にでも効くらしいですから。
Sanan-san rolled his eyes, but reached over to take his portion of medicine and sake. He had been telling the truth, though. His injuries had healed, at least as much as they were going to, but his arm still refused to work properly. It was slowly becoming clear that it would probably never work properly again.
石田三役は熱燗で飲むのが粋だよな。羨ましいぞ、お前ら。
Nagakura.
羨ましいなら飲めばいいだろ。新八さんだって怪我人じゃねえか。
酒は飲みてえが、 残念なことに俺の怪我はもう治っちまってるんだよな。
Nagakura was injured at the Ikeda Inn, but he recently declared that he was completely healed, despite the fact his wounds still looked painful. This man is built like a fucking wall. I'd heard he had convinced Hijikata-san that his wounds weren't as bad as Okito Heisuke's.
しかし、宗司と東堂君が怪我をするとはね。
あれは池田屋が暗かったから、普段の戦いなら遅れは取らないって。横合いから急に殴られたんだよ。おかげで八金なんて真っ二つだしさ。
拳で八金を割るか。随分と豪気な奴がいるもんだ。
Heisuke muttered something bitter and angry under his breath, but Harada just laughed.
あとなんだっけ、掃除から逃げ切ったやつもいたしな。
Okita only smiled quietly as Nagakura gestured towards him. This man just has a permanent fucking kitty face.
次があれば絶対に逃がしませんよ。次に勝つのは僕ですから。
Everyone began sharing their experience at the inn. Saito, however, remained silent. Is there something bothering you? I kept my voice low so as to not interrupt any of the other men in their conversations.
宗司らを負傷させるほどの実力者があの夜池田屋にいた理由を考えていた。長州のものではないと言ったそうだが、池田屋も人払いはしていたはずだ。
ああ。
池田屋の人間と老子たちの目を盗み、何らかの目的で侵入したか。目的は違えども行動を共にしていたのか。今確実にわかるのは奴らが相当の実力者だということだけだ。
The sliding door suddenly flew open as Saito finished his sentence and Kondo-san appeared.
会津藩から伝令が届いた。
As all conversations ceased, eyes turned to Kondo-san.
長州の襲撃に備え、我ら新選組も出陣するよう仰せだ。
A cheer went up from everyone present.
ついに来たか。待ちかねたぜ。
残念だったな、平助。怪我人はさすがに不参加だよな。
でもせっかくの晴れ舞台だし。
He turned to Hijikata-san, clearly hoping that the commander might give him special leave to go.
不参加に決まってんだろう。おとなしく屯所で留守をしてやがれ。
土方さん、鬼！この鬼副長！
なんだそりゃ褒めてんのか。つまきにされたくなきゃ黙ってろ。
Hisuke's mouth snapped shut. I didn't think Hijikata-san would actually stab one of his own men, but neither did I think he would go easy on any of them, even if they were injured.
東堂君、怪我人は足手まといらしいですから、素直に屯所で留守をしましょう。
仕方がねえか。分かった。今回は留守番してるよ。
僕も今回は諦めようかな。参加したいけど本調子じゃないし、ちょっと外で涼んでこようかな。
Okita sighed and got up to leave. I assume he'll be staying here as well? Kondo-san nodded.
ああ、宗司と平助がダダをこねんよう見張っておいてくれ。
And they're gonna be moping around. He let out a short laugh and several men grinned.